Waylon Twido, who is a police officer, escorted with Cedric Gibney, who is an anarchist. Ready, guys? Go ahead and walk. I got you, buddy. Next, we have Daniel Britt, who's a red-skulled ninja. Oh, a red-skulled lord ninja, escorted by Devin Wolt, who is a silver skeleton. Ready, guys? Next, Lainey Hansen, who is a black cat, escorted by Ari Agnew, who is a unicorn. Next is Sarah DeWolf, who is an ice cream cone, escorted with Coulter Devaney, who is a cop. Brody Albertson. Brody Albertson is a football player this year, escorted with by Cassidy Odegaard, who is a scarecrow. Next, we have Jaden Wolf. Costume is a cat, escorted with Logan Trigstad, who is a gorilla. All right, that completes group number 1 with an exclamation point. Next, we have the next group, which is titled the Jabberwockies. And to start the Jabberwockies out is Aubriella Pickard, who is the Queen Heart, the Heart Queen, escorted by Aisha Wolt, who is Judy Hobbs. Next, we have Lila Campbell, dressed as Pippi Longstocking, escorted by Brianna Prim, who is Juan. In a stormtrooper costume is Kirby Oftedal, and Kirby is escorted today by Ryan Sievers, who is the Black Thing. Next, we have a bull rider, also known as Mr. Clayton Weber, escorted with Orion Albertson, who is dressed tonight as Orion Albertson. And here we go. Riley Trigstad is a moo cow. He is escorted by Garrett Wicks, who is dressed today as Scooby-Doo. And Cora Gilkerson is Hedwig, escorted by Layla Gibney, who is an elf. Mara Doyle Maxwell is a butterfly, and Mara is escorted by Jesse Agnew, who is a black cat. Skylar Cochran is a SWAT police detective, and he is escorted by Gavin Taylor, who is Predator. And that ends our Jabberwocky group. Our next house, I should say, is the Unicorns. And we're going to start the Unicorns out with Tracer Feige, who is a cowboy, escorted by Julia Trigstad, who is a Celtics basketball player. Next, we have Oliver Calling, and Oliver Calling is Dash from The Incredibles, escorted by our foreign exchange student, Louis Esquivel, who ironically his costume is a foreign exchange student. Next is Callie Stringy. This year Callie Stringy is dressed as Twilight Sparkle, and she is escorted by Michaela Walls, who is a lazy, sleepy student. It's a good day. You only get to do that once a year, Michaela. Next, we have J.J. January Olson, who is Cruella de Vil. And Cruella de Vil today is escorted by Josie Tim, who is an idiom. Leah Wolf this year is dressed as Sacagawea, and Leah is escorted by Peyton Schiffer, who is a poodle girl. What? Missed that. Go ahead, Brooklyn. Under the panda suit is Miss Brooklyn Wilson. And Miss Brooklyn Wilson, the panda, is escorted by Lacey Weber, who is dressed this year as Cleopatra. Mr. Caleb Lindholm is next. Mr. Caleb Lindholm is a banana this year, escorted by Caden Garrels, also known as Caden Garrels. Boba Fett's in the house today. Boba Fett is coming around the corner. Under that mask of Boba Fett is Carter Campbell. And Carter is escorted by Zayd Anderson, who's dressed this year as a bat. That completes the unicorn house. We're on to the next house. And this next house it is house number 4, also known as the Rampaging Raiders. The Rampaging Raiders are started out by Harper Oswald. Harper this year is dressed as a mermaid, and she is escorted by Grace Feige, who is an SDSU basketball player. Next for the Rampaging Raiders, we have Kaya Stringy. And coming around the corner, Kaya, you will see, is a pink pie, escorted by Hannah DeWolf, who is dressed as Hannah DeWolf. Next, we have a very stealth and skilled ninja. That is Milo Lang, who is a ninja this year, escorted by Carter Wicks, who is an old Raider alumni. Logan Taylor is turning the corner as Iron Man. There's Logan as Iron Man, all right. And he is escorted today by Kobe Poost, and Kobe Poost is in the costume of himself. Next is Miss Misha Hayden. Misha Hayden is dressed up as Little Red Riding Hood, and she is escorted by Mr. Colton Wicks, who is a golfer this year. Lily Surfling will be peeking around the corner as a unicorn, escorted by Cassidy Hale, who's dressed this year as a minion. Ready, Tegan? Ooh, that's... Well... Next is Tegan Lee, and it says a clown, but it's kind of like scary, freaky clown. So Tegan Lee is a scary, freaky clown, and he is escorted by Kaylee Lindholm, who is dressed as Raggedy Ann. All right. Seth Weston. Seth Weston is dressed as a zombie, escorted by Mr. Martin Tubb, and Martin is also dressed this year as himself. That completes the Rampaging Raiders. On to the Gryffindor house. Little Harry Potter theme there. And to start out the Gryffindor house, we have Presley Devaney. Presley is dressed this year as a veterinarian, and she is escorted by Miss Megan Von Eye, who just wants to go trick-or-treating and get candy. Next, we have Mr. David Noland. David Noland is the Reaper. The Reaper this year is escorted by Seth Devaney, who's dressed as a werewolf. It says clown on my paper, but I don't think he looks like a clown. Next is Callan Surfling. Callan Surfling is dressed as a race car driver, escorted by Mr. Gavin Schlechter, who is Post Malone. Miss Maddie Morager is dressed as Bad Kitty, straight from the books, escorted by Emily Bomey, dressed as a teddy bear. Ready, Cody? No? Next, we have Cody Stringy. Cody is dressed as a soldier and has a +1. Escorted by Isaac Trigstad, who is dressed as himself. Next is Miss Hudson Thorberg, and Hudson this year is a rodeo clown, escorted by Taya Lee. Taya Walls. Wrong Taya, I apologize. Taya Walls, who is dressed as herself. Next, Mr. Rylan Olson. Rylan Olson is a football player, and he is walking alongside Dakota Britt, and Dakota Britt this year is Ghostface. Whoa, that is awesome. Next, we have Lorelei Walls, dressed as a dinosaur, next to Dylan Rennis, who is also a dinosaur. Very clever, very clever. That ends the Gryffindor house. Next we have the Monster Mayonnaise house, the Monster Mayonnaise. How that name came about, I have no clue. That was McCoy? All right, McCoy's Monster Mayonnaise. All right, first up we have David Gilkerson. And David Gilkerson this year is the Monster Book of Monsters, escorted by Jack Olson, who is the guy with springy eyes. Lorelei's next? Yep. All right. Lorelei Spear. Lorelei this year is a magic princess escorted by Caleb Jatan, who is a farmer. You're going to go. What? Here's Louise? McCoy Johnson, heading around the corner as a dinosaur. And Natalie Feige. Oh. Not Natalie Feige. Oh. McCoy and Maggie, escorted by Kenny Hoyne, who is Luis. Next we have Natalie Feige. And Natalie this year is a scarecrow, escorted by Hattie Hansen and Maddie Jones, who is Miranda from Brave. Hattie Hansen is Miranda from Brave, and Maddie Jones is Doran from Mean Girls. Samuel and Robbie, you're next. Samuel Sorensen is a soldier, escorted by Mr. Robbie Malish as a dinosaur. Mr. Braden Oftedal is a Clemson football player. Braden is escorted by Castle Anderson, who is Castle Anderson. He's the Lazy Pizza Ranch employee. Next is Jordan Regal. Jordan Regal is dressed this year as a basketball player, and she is escorted by Kimberly Trigstad, who is being abducted by aliens. Next is Gavin Odegaard, and Gavin this year is the Black Panther, and he is escorted by Skylar Lindholm, who is himself this year. That completes the Monster Mayonnaise. The next house is entitled Full House, meaning they don't want any more people in their house, or they like the TV show, or both. All right, here for Full House, first we have Carson Hansen. And Carson Hansen is a SWAT team member, escorted by Jared Tim, who is the homecoming king. Go ahead, Haley. Haley, I knew that. Go ahead, Haley. Next we have Haley Prinz, who is dressed this year as a witch, escorted by Chloe Tiemann. Oh, yeah. Next is Grayson Layton. Grayson is dressed as Ariel, escorted by Faith Hale. And Faith Hale this year is a scarecrow. Next is Jordan Regal, who is a snow leopard. Logan Regal, I apologize. Logan Regal is a snow leopard, escorted by Haley Taylor, who is Sully from Monsters, Inc. Next, Tucker Pickard. Tucker Pickard is a cowboy, escorted by Isaiah Thunder. Next is Aiden Olinsky. Aiden Olinsky is the Skull Lord Ninja, escorted by Will Olson. Next we have Harmony Gilkerson, who's Hermione Granger. Harmony is Hermione, escorted by Samantha Washi, who is Wonder Woman Baby. Horse guy. All right, next, Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan is a skeleton gladiator. A skeleton gladiator escorted by Hyde Hansen, who is a horse guy. That ends Full House. Now we're on to the Great Eights, which is group number 8, the Great Eights. First is Leah Hayden. Leia is Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman is escorted by Emily Nold, who is a hunter. Next is Graydon Layton. Graydon Layton is a very famous figure from Star Wars, Mr. Chewbacca, escorted by Maya Hammer, who is a black cat. Ramsey Foberg. Ramsey this year is a fairy, escorted by Charles Jarotowski, who is the creepy gold mask man. And just an FYI, it is Charles's birthday today. Happy birthday, Charles. Next is Gabby Pickard. Gabby Pickard is a black cat, and Gabby is escorted by Isabel Malish and Cece Gibney, who are both Superwoman. Next is Mr. Dayton Olson. Dayton is a basketball player escorted by Casey Rennis, who is a dinosaur. Next, Lydian Gilkerson. Lydian this year is Rubius Hagrid, escorted by Eric Nolan, who is the Reaper. Wyatt Trigstad. Wyatt Trigstad is a dinosaur, the inflatable skeleton. Wyatt is escorted by Jacob Chitan, who's dressed today as a farmer. Next up, we have Rhett Poost. Rhett is a black cat, escorted by Leslie Lindholm, who is a fairy. That ends the grade 8s. Next we have the Animal House. The Animal House. I see that. All right. First we have Hope Haran, and Hope just told me that she is a fairy, and Emily Robson is who she is with, and Emily today is dressed as Mike Wazowski. Next is Collins Olson. Collins is a unicorn, escorted by Talia Lee, who's a Minnesota Twins baseball player. What's that? Daniel is not with him? You're with him? Okay. Isaac Peterson. Isaac Peterson is a creeper, and he is escorted by J.J. Agnew. Next, we have Maddox Moss. Maddox is Stephon Diggs, plays for the Minnesota Vikings, and Mr. Daniel Jatan, who is Farmer Dan, a.k.a. Kobe Poost, he said. I'm not quite sure, but okay. Next, we have Stella. Stella Handegard is dressed as Uma. Go. And Stella is escorted by Kylie Hansen, who is a deer. Next is Roman Malish. Roman this year is a sumo wrestler, escorted by Austin McFall. Next is Elizabeth Sorensen, and she is Sans the Skeleton, and she is escorted by Josie Nold, who is Orphan Annie. Good. Next, Mr. Dylan Sievers is a character from the Halo games, escorted by Melody Gilkerson, and Melody is ready to play some Quidditch, dressed as Harry Potter. And the final group is entitled The Perfect Tens. To start out the Perfect Tens today, we have Rebecca Josephson. And Rebecca this year is dressed as a witch, and she is escorted by Miss Kaylee Patterson, who is dressed as her future self. Nice, Jericho. Next, we have Jericho Klopf. Jericho is also dressed as a character from Halo, and he is escorted by Jesus Hinoja, dressed today as himself. Miss Amelia Malish. Miss Amelia Malish is the crazy cat lady, escorted by Miss Brecken Layton, who is a ladies' Cavs basketball player. LeBron James. He plays for the Lakers. Next, Kenley. Next is Kenley Hansen, and Kenley today is dressed as a black cat, and she's escorted by Taya Lee, who is a minion. Ivan Peterson is a clown with skull face, escorted by Parker Handegard, dressed as a nerd. Next, Emmeline Pickard. Emmeline is a football player, escorted by Isabel Pickard. Isabel is a unicorn, and we also have a pumpkin thrown in there as well. Ready, Brooksy? Getting close to the end here. We still have a few to go. We have Brooks Layton, and Brooks is dressed as a football player this year, along with Kenneth Lindholm, dressed as himself. And finally, for the Rutland School parade, we have Cooper Morager, dressed as a werewolf, and along with Cooper is a cow, and Hayden Oftedal, dressed as a 1950s girl. Hold on, Mr. Riggins. All right, so if there, I do have a bunch of kids up here, but if there are any other children that would like to come through that are from the community, please feel free to get in line. They will be coming through here in just a moment. We want to thank everybody again for coming and supporting your children and the Rutland School. We hope that you have a safe Halloween tonight and have a fantastic rest of your day. Not much. What's up with you? We're going to go back to our houses, I think. That's what we're going to do. No, you know what? We're going to dismiss back to our classroom. Yep. Rutland students, if you could find a seat on the floor, please. Thank you. Parents, if you are